I am so excited about today's episode because we're going to talk about something that we just did as a family for the very first time, and that is a family vision weekend. If we did one thing right over the years, we used to do this, just you and I, every year, take some time to think through how the year went and what we were hoping for the next year. But this year, we brought our kids into it, and we spent basically 3 days digging in, getting intentional, recapping, and we're going to outline for you guys today all of what we did. So hopefully it'll be helpful, inspire you, and maybe you'll do it with your family as well.
Welcome to the Family Goals Podcast. We're Graham and Shay Cochran, and we believe that your family can do things differently. The payoffs are worth it, and the little things can have a huge impact. If you're watching this or listening to this, thank you so much. These are a collection of initial episodes we're giving to you. And here's the deal. This is a two-way street. We will not do any more episodes unless you want us to. We've done an initial few episodes to launch the show on a variety of different topics around family and around marriage and around family culture and all that stuff. But tell us if you want more of these episodes, if you're liking them. And the way you do that is real simple. If you're watching on YouTube, you can subscribe to the channel and like this video. You can also leave a comment and say, we love it, we need more of it. If you're listening to the audio podcast on Apple Podcasts in particular, you can rate the show. This is really, really helpful. Rate the show and leave a review. All of that signals that you like the show and you want us to continue to do this show. So we're going to let these episodes ride for a little bit if you're watching or listening right when they dropped. But you got to tell us that you want more. And if you want more, then we will continue the show, hopefully on a weekly basis.
That would be fun.
That would be fun. So this takes time, y'all. We have a life. So if we're going to do this, we want to make sure that,
tell us if it's worth
matters.
It. Yeah.
Okay, so kick us off.
Yeah, let's jump in. So as I mentioned, if we did one thing right over the years, 18 years of marriage, I think it was that we took the time at the end of each year and we did a little bit of an assessment. And back in those days, we were broke as a joke, so I'm sure we didn't go stay at a hotel or anything like that. But the way I remember it is we would at least set aside a day, maybe a half a day. Maybe we'd get some snacks and some coffee, and we would ask a few very basic questions. What worked? What didn't work? What do we want to see next year? And I remember, the way I remember it is that some years, especially once the kids got really little, we're really little and we're growing up. Some years it was like there was so much that didn't work.
Yep.
And it was pretty discouraging. And there was maybe like a very short bullet point list of things that did work. But it was in doing that assessment, we would do it usually at the end of the year or very beginning of the year. And then sometimes we would do it halfway through the year. I think it was that kind of intentionality that helped us to be constantly checking in with each other and course correcting as we need it. So now we've been doing this in one form or another for 18 plus years. But this year we decided for the first time, all right, so our kids are ages 11 and 14, we decided to bring them in on it and to have a family vision weekend. So really built out on what we have always done initially, but bringing them in. And I think it was so awesome. We just got back yesterday. I think the whole family loved it. I think the girls were super involved in it. I think it was a blessing to us to see how engaged they were. But we're really excited to kind of give you guys some insight into what we did. And hopefully that's just helpful for you and inspiring for you.
Yeah, Shay put together a bunch of reels over the weekend as we were doing it, and it was pretty incredible to see responses in terms of what people wanting some structure so that you could create your own version of this. And so we're going to walk you through that structure, but we're going to make it easy for you as well. We've put all of this together. We're about to share with you sort of the structure of the different sessions, what we covered, all of that together in a PDF. So you can just download it as a gift for you. So just go to familygoalspodcast.com/familyvision, all one word, familygoalspodcast.com/familyvision. If you're listening or watching wherever you are, we'll put it in the notes below as well. But it's just a free gift. That way you can say, okay, here's the questions, here's the stuff we covered. So don't feel like you have to take notes in this episode. We're going to explain it, but that'll be a reference point for you. Feel free to use all of it or some of it, or just as an inspiration for your own thing.
Or just be like, they are so extra, I'm never doing that.
Hey, man, we could be more extra. This is not
for everyone.
The preface that Shay gave is just to set you up, because what we're about to go through is going to sound very like tidy and like here's
or intense.
Yeah, it depends. I didn't think it was that intense.
It really
but
wasn't.
Because I feel like we could be. I love intentionality, so I kind of love this stuff. But But if it sounds really like tidy and like structured and like, oh my gosh, like keep in mind, like what Shay said is all we're doing here is trying to at least once a year, like grab each other and be like, hey, how are
How'd that go
things
for
going?
you?
How are things going? Right. In all these different areas of life, because if that's all you did, that's better than most people who never talk about these things because life just keeps flowing. So at some years, we just sat down with a bottle of wine or bottles of wine or whatever it was and just try to like have the hard conversation. And that was all it was. In some years, there's more margin to do more. So familygoalspodcast.com/family vision if you want the document, but we're going to break it into the 5 sessions. But here's what we did. We just got away. Practically, we did like a somewhat staycation 2-hour drive away. So we like, where can we drive? A nice hotel, nice resort.
Stayed on points.
Yeah, it was free. We had Marriott points. So free points, a free hotel stay. We did 2 nights. So technically there's only 1 full day there. And you know this if you've traveled, but pro tip, if you can get to the place early, request an early check-in, or even if you can't have your room ready, just go sit by the pool or go somewhere nice on the property. We got there around noon, 1 o'clock. So we maximized that first day. And then you had the whole second day.
Yep.
And then we did late checkout request on the day we're supposed to leave. And then we stayed another 4 hours on the property after that. And they just stored our luggage. So we got over 48 hours. I counted at 50 hours on the property, but it's only 2 nights of a stay. So you don't need to do 3 days or 4 days. Mm-hmm. Even 1 night away is better than nothing. But if you get the 2 nights, you at least get that full day in between.
Yeah. And the content for us was spread out over 3 days, 4 different sessions. We did the first session the night that we got there. I think we did it before dinner.
Yep.
Second, but after we'd eaten and had snacks
had
and
lunch
everyone,
and
you know,
snacks.
was ready and rested after the car ride. So we did session 1 that night. The next morning we woke up and did session 2. Maybe took a break.
Then we went to the pool.
And then did session 3. And then we did session 4 the next morning.
No, we did session.
Forgotten.
Yeah, we only did 1 session in the morning. Then we went to the pool for a couple hours, then came back in the afternoon
and did the other
session 3.
Yeah,
and then dinner.
Yeah, so it was spread out. The 4 sessions that we're going to talk to you guys about were spread out over essentially 3 days. And I think one of the keys there is just making sure that you spread it out with lots of fun. It wasn't just like we made them sit in a hotel room for 50 hours straight. There was a lot of fun in there as well. Yeah. But okay, so let's jump into what was the first session that we covered.
Yeah, so the first one, we're doing this we did it right at the end of December. But end of December or early January is a great time. But anytime you do this, it can work because you're just looking back in the last 12 months or so, or 6 months, whatever time period. So we did a recap first. So before planning or talking about the new year, we wanted to do something that Shay and I call count the fruit, which is, and I do this in business, and I teach my clients to do this as well, especially if you're a business owner, you plow through life and you plow through your business and you'll have built things, launched things, sold things, had wins. A whole year will go by and you won't even have remembered what you did because you're already planning the next year and keeping up with the economy and changes. And so we're notoriously bad as entrepreneurs, and the same is true for family members, to look back and say, oh, wow, look at all the great things that happened in the past year. So the first thing we wanted to do was just like if you planted a tree and it grew all this fruit, but you moved on to planting new trees, you forget, well, it's got all these awesome apples or oranges or lemons or whatever are on there. We want to count all the fruit. So what we did was we had the girls and Shay and I individually, we explained the concept, pull out a piece of paper or a journal, and we said, just take a few minutes silently to write down all the highlights of the last year for you.
Could be big, could be small.
Yeah.
Anything that stuck out to you.
Some of them were trips we took. Some of them were like, the girls were like, I made the cheer team for the first time. Chloe really enjoyed the 4th of July. We just had a couple families of friends over, and she just said it was a really fun night that night. So that was fruit for her. It could be huge. Like for me last year, I gave a TEDx talk for the first time. That was a big deal, a big dream on my heart. But it could also be a really small thing. Like, I don't know, I got to watch all those movies I wanted to watch. Or I remember that one day where I just stayed home and I binged this Netflix show. Yeah. Whatever you want to celebrate. We had them write them down individually because everyone's different and you don't want to influence your kids tell them what the fruit has to
We
be.
wanted their brains to do the work of thinking
Yeah.
through, like, what was awesome about this year?
So give it 10, 15, 20 minutes, something like that. Some part of what was fun about that is like Shay was even like flipping through her phone, looking at her photos to remember, like,
I
what
have
did
a
we
horrible
do?
memory, so I have to kind of go back through my photo feed
Which is a great
so
tool,
that I can
though. 'Cause
really remember,
she
oh my
was,
gosh, we've done
yeah,
so
remember
much.
we took
Yeah.
this one trip, or remember we even around town, we visited that random museum.
Yeah.
I forgot we did that
We
back
took a
in
pottery
February.
class.
Yeah, like
Random
we did
stuff.
like the spin pottery. Like you forget some of the small things you do, so you look back at the photos and then it reminds you of the great experiences you had. So we do that individually, then we share it out loud.
Yep.
There's gonna be a lot of overlap, but every time someone's sharing it, you're all being filled with gratitude and you're mutually encouraging one another about, like, man, we did a lot, or we had a lot of great things happen last year. Even if it was a hard year, all you're focusing on is what was fruitful and what was good last year. And so it gets the whole
Yeah.
family starting with gratitude and remembering, dude, a lot happened. Before we go, it was an okay year or good. Before we label the year, let's actually look at the specifics.
That's especially important if it was a hard year.
Yeah.
Because even if it was a hard year, you're going to find good buried in there. And it might just take a little bit more effort to find it. But it's then even all the more important that you do find it so that you don't just write off the year as that was a mess, that was a flop. There was good in there. So sometimes you got to do a little bit more digging to find it. But the emphasis being like, start the whole thing off with gratitude. So we did that. We kind of closed that out in prayer before transitioning to something a little more practical, tactical. What worked and what didn't work?
The two most important questions you could ask. If all you did and all you took away from
Yeah,
even this episode
totally.
was just these two questions, will transform your family and your life. And by your family, even if it's just you and your spouse, like it's a reflection again. It's acknowledging some things worked this year. And we'll forget what those things are if we don't intentionally look at them, because we want to keep those up or do more of them or just celebrate them. And then some things didn't work. And the phrasing is important. Didn't work is not saying something is bad or broken or failed.
yeah.
It's just that's not working for us anymore. That could be our schedule. We'll get into some of the details for a second. But it's also important that you start with what did work. Because again, we're building off of gratitude for the year, off our highlights, counting the fruit. Now we're going to make the two lists, and we literally had the girls put up on a wall with some tape, and we got them involved. They like markers, so we're like, "Hey, you can be the stenographers. You guys can write it all down or whatever." And so one list. We started with what worked last year, and so they didn't really know what we meant. So Shay and I started the list of explaining. Well, we thought when we switched y'all to cheer, you were doing school
sports versus just club sports.
there was less
whatever.
driving. Our afternoons were less hectic. And for us, we felt like the back half of the year when we made that change, that worked incredibly well for a family. And so they're like, oh, okay. And then we could say,
There were some funny things. Like there was a period of time this year where we did one of those like mail chef packages, mail food, where you get like your meals in the mail. And it was so great for a minute because the kids could cook, they could follow the recipes. So I got a night off a week of cooking. But very quickly they got very tired of the food there. We all kind of got a little tired of it. So it brought up some funny things, and it gives the kids an opportunity to be like, oh my gosh, Mom, that did not work. I'm so glad we don't do that
a good
anymore.
example.
Please don't make us do
yeah,
that.
that's a good
again."
example. Yeah.
Just kind of some fun. Some things were more serious, some things are more lighthearted. But it also is really helpful because you're getting to reflect on some of the decisions that you've made that really are consistently working. Like a few years ago, we transferred the kids to a private school that was 50 minutes away. All right, now we're 5 years into that.
Yeah.
And it's really working. Like we're really glad that they're involved in that school. So we say, okay, great. We want to keep that up. That really worked.
And we asked like, do y'all
Is this
still like
working?
going to school? We joke about like, we can put y'all on homeschool if you want, like, because they complain about, how much homework they have. And I mean, I'm not going to homeschool them. So I have to find someone on the street to
Pay
homeschool
somebody
them.
else to homeschool
I ain't going to do that. But we asked, like, is that working? Do you which is teaching even the kids, teaching that you can question anything.
Yeah,
Just
and
about
should
just
question
about
everything.
anything outside of like, is our marriage working? Like, and if it's not, like, that doesn't mean you end it, but like,
We question that. And then we have to answer that question. And if it's not working,
but
we
like,
have to fix it.
there's some weird fallacy of like, some things are just the way they are. It's just the way it is.
Or don't admit that it's not going well.
Hey, but you should feel the freedom to say, hey, is our church working? Is school in the way we're doing it working? Because if it is, it only is going to reinforce that. And if it's not, that doesn't mean it's not working at all. It could just mean some small part of it isn't working. And this is how you get better.
Yeah.
So it takes a lot of guts to admit that something might not be working, but that's how it can improve.
Yeah. So again, if this is all you did, do that part.
Yeah.
Do the count the fruit. Do the what worked and what didn't work. Do it as a couple. Do it as a single. Do it with your kids. That's a great exercise, and you're going to come away with a lot in terms of, okay, what shifts do we need to make for the next year? So that brings us to session 2, which was the next morning. And that was kind of a unique session for us. We did a session on what we called abiding, how to interact with God, how to hear his voice. Obviously, we are Christians, so we come from a Christian background. We love the Bible, and we believe what it says, and we believe that to be connected in relationship with God, you have to be in the Bible. So we're kind of teaching the kids at a young age how to engage with the Bible. It can be kind of hard to read, and how to engage with God and how to hear his voice of instruction and leadership for your life. So kind of a niche session for our family, but really important for us, really
The
foundational.
most important, yeah.
Like if there's only one thing that we could teach our kids from our Christian worldview, it's to hear God's voice so that you know what to do next, what he has for you. You are able to walk through life with wisdom and discernment, and live in a way that's going to benefit you and benefit others. So that was important to us. And that was a really great session. As a part of that session, we read a little bit of scripture. We talked through various aspects. And then the cool part of it at the end was, it's very popular for people to come up with a word of the year. It's also very acceptable to come up with your goals for the year. And I think what we wanted to challenge and the mindset shift that we wanted to make in our kids was, what if you heard your word for the year? What if the God of the universe, who loves you and knows the plan that he has for your life, told you the word that he has for you, or told you the goals that he has for you? If we're talking about goal setting, that's just a very intriguing idea to me, that what if we can receive our goals and receive our word for the year instead of just deciding it? So we kind of led the girls through a little bit of an exercise that we did ourselves alongside them that involved digging through a little bit of scripture and some quiet prayer and reflection, and listening being the most important part of that. I don't even think as Christians we're taught to pray. We're not always taught to listen in case there might be an answer to the prayer. So we're really ourselves and as a family trying to teach them how to listen. And so we all prayed as a family, we prayed individually, and we had everybody listen for anything that God wanted them to know about the next year. And it was really cool. Not all of us came away with the same word. And we did this in a very weird way, so that if one kid's just drawing a blank, they don't feel ashamed or like something was wrong or anything like that. We did it in a way that was let's just see what happens, right? And there's no shame. Maybe you're going to feel like you heard something or didn't hear something, and really that doesn't matter. What matters is just developing that kind of practice of listening. So we all came away with different things, including the kids. And my favorite part was probably Chloe felt like she kind of had something for each of us. So she had spent her time in prayer. She said she had actually already told us a few days before that she already felt like God had given her 2 words for the year. And so she brought those back up, but then she also was but I also felt like while I was listening, praying and listening, that God said, this for you, Dad, and this for you, Mom, and this for you, Vera. And that was so encouraging, especially for the older sister to say to Vera, God's telling me he has big plans for you. He has purposes for you. So incredibly sweet, incredibly poignant. Yes, a bit of a niche session.
Yeah. Well, I would say, we had an interesting situation where our youngest, she's very shy when it comes to this kind of stuff.
She's also only 11.
Well, yeah. she is interacting with God and learning to interact with God in a way I never did it at that young of an age. But she probably feels the most insecure about how all this works. And she's got Shay for a mom and me for a dad, and Chloe, her older sister, is very
much
very much like the two of us. And so she probably feels a little like the black sheep in terms of I'm not as spiritual as you guys are. And you could just tell she's I don't really want to journal and I didn't really get much. And so she was a little discouraged. And so you, to Shay's point, you don't want someone in your family, it could not just be the kid, it could be your spouse who feels like the least spiritually mature person.
Broken, this didn't work for me.
Yeah. And so the way you set it up matters, but also while I was seeing that unfold and we were kind of sharing and you could kind of sense
She was a little just didn't feel like she maybe.
Yeah, she was a little discouraged. I just sensed that God wanted us to pray over her. So instead of her feeling like she's missing something, we made her, in a way, the center. In a good way, we just like laid hands on her, prayed over, encouraged her, like that God loves her and has a plan for her life, and like wants to use her in a powerful way, and that just her willingness to try to pursue Him is like just so, it warms His heart. And so I think when we were done with that prayer, she felt, you could just sense her feel like loved on and like not isolated, like, oh, I'm over here. We brought her in closer, of like, no, you're so important. So it was a cool opportunity for us to not pivot, but like be sensitive in the moment to who needs what in the moment.
And like whatever your experience was with that, it's great.
Yeah.
Awesome. Wonderful. No one's experience is better than the others.
Yeah, because all we're doing here, right? The win is that we're modeling. So if you're a person of faith, then you really want your kids to walk with Jesus. Like that's all that matters. And so you can't make them walk with Jesus ever. If you try to, it's going to only push them away. But that doesn't mean you don't talk about it or just let them do whatever. No, you model what it looks like in everything. So that's why you go to church every week, because you're modeling that church is not something that's optional. It's like what you do. You model reading your Bible, so they see you reading your Bible every day. But this is a good opportunity to model, hey, God does speak to us. And the way we hear it is by we start in His Word, and then we quiet ourselves and we listen. And so even if she doesn't hear anything, it's being modeled to her that that's normative.
Yeah. Okay, so then we took the whole day. We had fun. Yep. We were outside by the pool. And then the session we did that evening before dinner was, I think, a really important one, and one I've been excited to do.
Yeah.
And that was the Cochrane Mission, Vision, and Values. So a few years ago, I don't know, Colorado, 6 years ago when we first did this. 4.5 years ago, we sort of did this. Like, all right, our family's been around for a little bit. We can kind of see the personalities that have developed. We obviously know our own likes and interests and passions. Let's kind of put down on paper what we feel like is our family, our values, kids are really our mission in life, our values, and what kind of makes the Cochranes the Cochranes. Yep. But of course, that was just Graham and I kind of deciding based on who we are, what it meant to be a Cochrane and that kind of thing. So we did that a long time ago. And it was really fun. Just you and I did it. But this year we were like, the kids are old enough to really participate in that. And honestly, they're going to be truth tellers, right? They're going to be the ones that say, well, no, Mom, like that's total BS. Like you say that we're about that, but we don't really do that. So it's also interesting to see what they pick up on, If your kids are like, we're all about cell phones.
I was nervous about this. Our values are phones.
Netflix. That's what's so beautiful about bringing your kids into any kind of feedback and assessment is they're going to be honest. They're going to be truth tellers. So again, we just taped pieces of paper up on the hotel room wall, one for mission, one for vision, and one for values. Values you kind of described. So let's talk about the way we described them. So mission was, what is our purpose as a family? What is our purpose as a family? Vision was kind of the practical application of that mission for this next year. So what do we want to focus on this year? And then values was, what does it mean to be a Cochrane? So what makes our family different from the next family, because every family is different. The things that you like are different. You might be a running family, or you might be a video game family, or you might be a, travel family.
Can I be in the video game family?
No. Oh. But there are things that make you unique. That's wonderful and beautiful about being in your family. All families are not the same. They don't need to be the same. So what are the things that kind of make the Cochranes unique? Because we feel like those things that make us unique as a family or even as an individual are part of the good works that God has for us to do in the world. So they're important. It's not just inconsequential that the family likes sports. Okay, well then God, if He's given everyone in your family a desire to be involved in sports, then there's something He wants to do through that. So those desires and interests and passions are very, very important and relate to the mission and the things that you're actually trying to do. So we started with values.
What does it mean to be a
What
Cochrane?
does it mean to be a Cochrane? And that's really funny stuff. I mean, that's easy for the kids to participate in, right? We like to do this. This is really important to us. There was a little bit that was about kind of how we do things. Like we work hard. We all work hard at what we have in front of us. And then there were some things about likes and interests. Like we love the arts. We love theater. We love museums. We love music. We love supporting the arts. So that's why we'll pay to go see a Broadway show, or we'll go pay to support a local musician. That's why Daddy will always tip a street musician every time we see one, because we love the arts in all forms, including writing and movies. And so we put our money and our time behind them. So there were certain things like that that are just interest-based, but really do show things that we are all about. That's kind of unique to us as a family.
Yeah. And it was interesting. Like, if you got the list, remind me what they wrote down, to see what the kids said. Like Chloe, the first thing she said, well, at first I didn't know if they were going to, want to speak up, if we were going to have to go first again. But by this point, like, I was like, what do you think it means to be a and as before, it was like coming off my mouth, like Chloe had raised her hand. And it was like, oh, she already has something. And so she said, we work hard. I was like, oh, interesting. That, like, she sees that as like a quality of the family. And it was cool to hear that.
And then Vera chimed in with the next one.
She did. We're blessed to be a blessing, which is literally a phrase that we share all the time.
Like, everything we have and everything we are is so that we can be a blessing to other people.
Which is a huge heartbeat of the Lord. Also, Genesis 12 is all about like him blessing Abraham so that he will be a blessing to many nations and many people. And so, like, we talk about that a lot. And it's so cool that our 11-year-old is like, oh, we're blessed to be a blessing. Yeah, she's remembering it.
She also added the fun and silly part, which I appreciate.
Yeah. Which is it's just awesome. Like, because that reminds us we need to continue to be fun and silly. That's part of our family. But yeah, it was cool for me to see that. I think one of them said that we're family oriented. That wasn't the language they used, but they tried to. We gave them some language around it. But like, we do things as a family, and we spend time together as a family. And that was really powerful to hear them say that. That's part of what it means to be a Cochran. And so part of it was what we thought we were going to get to. Like, Shay and I had some ideas of what's unique to us as a family, but to hear your kids share from what their perspective is and what does it mean?
See.
Like, this might be the first time they've ever thought about it. But what I love about this question, and this came when I was just praying about, God, what do you want us to talk about during this time? He said, I want you to answer the question, what does it mean to be a Cochran? That came from him. That wasn't my idea. And that was beautiful in that it's getting them to not just have an identity as an individual, Chloe, the person, right, where she's going to have her own likes and her own dislikes and her own friends and her own school projects and sports. Like, she can become an individual, which obviously we want to raise our kids to be individuals, but like, the whole world is fighting for them to be pulled away from us anyway, to be just to stay in your own room, do your own thing. And the world is just going to influence them. So how can we have an identity as a family as well? So
you're a part of something bigger.
You're part of something bigger.
And that starts in your family.
Yeah, what a concept, right? And so we've been doing this maybe informally is the word, informally, but like, this was the first time we wrote down, what does it mean to be a Cochran? And so for them to maybe for the first time in their mind say, well, Cochrans are generous. Cochrans work hard. They're fun and silly. Now they're starting to see themselves as part of this family identity, which is so powerful, because if that bond of like, hey, the Cochrans do this, or whatever your name, your family, this is who we are and this is what we believe in, they feel like they're part of a team that they're never going to want to leave, even though they're going to have their individual life, and we're going to.
We do want them to leave. Let's be very clear about that.
Yes, I want them to physically move and physically pay their own bills.
Emotionally, we would love for them to still be connected to us.
And interestingly enough, at the end of this trip, it was one of the first times I heard Chloe kind of say, like, are we ever going to be able to, as adults, come back and do trips with you guys, even when we're grown-ups? And can we, like, do stuff with you? And part of that might be because, like,
they're still young and we're paying the bills.
We're paying the bills and we're doing nice things. But that she was interested in, like, she's very independent. Mm-hmm. So for her is the one that's like, I can't wait to be out on my own and do my own thing. For her to start to say, oh, even if I go out on my own, will I still be able to do things with you as a family? That's a win for me, because I'm seeing her. She's like, she's going to have her own family. Yeah. She'll probably have her own new last name. But she's going to say, I'm still a Cochran.
Yeah.
And that's a family I want to be a part of. So that was really powerful. So we just wrote down bullet points.
Yep. So that was values. We went from values to mission. So mission becomes kind of like the big picture. Why are we here? Yeah. Why do we exist? This is If you're a Christian, it's a theological question. So we ended up with a very short list of things that really center around like loving and enjoying God and loving others was sort of the gist of where we landed, and pointing others to God. So that was kind of where we landed. What is our mission as a family? And then once you have those two things, all right, what's unique about us and why are we here? Then you take those two things and distill down the vision, which is like, how are we practically applying our mission in this next year? What are the things that we do? And what's great about that is you're using the other two things as a guide to make sure that the way you're outlining your life is actually congruent with the things that you say that you value. Well, okay, over here, we said that the Cochrane's purpose is this, our mission is this. So does that translate into our plans for next year? We said that the Cochranes are this, or that our purpose is this. Do we see that in what we're planning for the next year? So I think what's cool is when you end with the vision part of it, you're really making sure that you're living out what you say your priorities are as a family. You're living out what you say are your values in real time. So the vision was our longest one, I think. And it was kind of cool because we would almost reference the things that we had said on both ends. Like, okay, if the Cochranes are generous, what does that mean? What does that look like for next year? What organizations do we want to keep giving to? How are we going to continue to be generous? What percentage are we going to use to be generous with? What other things fall under generosity, like having people over or taking people out to dinner or something like that? So it was just, I don't want to belabor that point, but it really was like a coming together of mission and who we are into like, what are we going to continue to do next year? And are those things in line with the things that we say are important to us?
Yeah. And if anything, it'll help you have the permission to not do certain things that are good things that people should do, but maybe they're not what you're supposed to do as a family. That's why starting out by saying, what should we do this year that's good? It's too heavy of a burden.
Yeah.
But when you're like, what does it mean to be us as a family? And what is our mission as a family? And then you're like, okay, so then if we're going to live those things out, then we'll focus on these are some ways. It's not exhaustive. We'll come up with new ways, but it kind of, does it make sense?
And it helps to filter out maybe things you have been doing. You're kind of saying the same thing. Are we going to keep doing this? And if we're going to keep doing this, whatever this is, why? Like, where does it fit in with the things that we've said are really valuable to us? Also, to think about it another way, we sort of worked in order of priorities. So what are the things that we said are the most important to us? All right, how is that going to translate into the things that we're committing ourselves to next year? Let's lay the groundwork for that first. So things like church, things like youth group involvement, that kind of thing for us was like a foundational thing. So we established those foundational commitments based on our values and our mission first. And then all the stuff that you can add in, great, that's on top, but at least we know that our foundational pieces are in place. So that was mission, vision, values, session
number 3.
Yep.
And then then we finished for the evening, and then our final day, we had just a morning session. That was it, and we kind of combined these last two sessions. So I've got 5 listed, but really number 4 and 5.
We did them in 4 like chunks, 4 sessions.
These last 2 kind of came together. So the beautiful thing is, right, if you started with the first session, it's looking backwards. We're celebrating before we like take over the world for good in the new year. Let's celebrate the wins. Then we got into like, for us as a Christian family, like, how can we hear? We want to hear God's voice, especially even before we plan the next year. We want to make sure we're listening because we might have a plan. We want to follow him, right? To be a Christian is to walk with Jesus or to follow Jesus, not to be ahead of Jesus, right? So we want to know, where is he going, and we'll go with him. And getting our word for the year. And then we started to think about the big picture as a family. What are we all about at all times as a family? And then the final section is like getting even more down on the ground to like what's happening in our actual life and what does literally the calendar look like. So the 2 mini sessions, and you can talk about this, we did the 8 sectors of life where we did a rating system, and then we did a family calendar sync. So maybe kind of talk through
so the 8 sectors of life, as Graham kind of set it up, we basically shared with them, actually we had them kind of participate in figuring out if they could guess, like, what are the 8 main like sectors of life? So these are the way that we've outlined it: fun and play, or leisure, you could call that leisure; health, you could include mental health, emotional health, spiritual health. I mean, you could really break that down, but we just say health. Spiritual, 4 is relationships, but specifically like friendships and community. 5 was work, or for the kids, it would be school. 6 is money. 7 is sleep. And we make sleep its own category because if you are sleeping well, it is going to positively influence every other area of your life. And if you are not getting enough sleep, it's going to negatively influence your financial decisions, your relationships, etc. So sleep gets its own. And then 8 is marriage and family. So it's like your really core relationships, marriage. So marriage for us, family for the kids. So those are sort of the 8 life sectors. And then we had the kids give them each on their own piece of paper. No one was going to see it. Give their own 1 out of 10 rating. So 1 being this area of life is going absolutely horribly.
Dumpster fire.
Utter chaos. 10 being like, this is absolutely thriving. I wouldn't even improve on a single thing. It's literally perfect. And the way that we set this up was that this is not a scorecard for life. This is not a report card for life. The goal, you're never going to get 10 out of 10 in every area. That's really not the point. The point is, I love what our pastor said last Sunday. He said a lot of people have uphill hopes, but downhill habits. Yeah. And so that's just so true and funny. So part of this is making sure that, we all want to have savings in the bank. We all want to have a healthy marriage. We all want to feel physically good in our body. We all want to have fun and leisure, but our habits tend to be taking us in the opposite direction. So doing this kind of assessment and giving a rating for each area really just helps you to be honest about how each of those areas is actually really going. And you and I have done this for a very long time. This was actually a part of what we did. It started with, I think, Laura Casey's goal setting framework that I learned, 15 years ago. And I always found that to be very helpful. You would look at each of those different areas, you would rate each of them, and we would probably put a little bit of notes like, well, why was that rated a 3? Yeah. What wasn't working? What specifically about it wasn't working? Or why was that rated a 9? What do you think is attributed to going so well? So we had the kids do that, making sure that they understood that the goal of life is not, a 10 out of 10 report card, but just the intentional assessment. We had them do that. And then we had everybody share what their highest was. Like, what did they feel like was going the best for them this year? And that was really encouraging to hear them share that. And obviously we shared it as well. And we asked them, what do they attribute it to? Or what do they think is the one thing for them that's making the biggest difference in that particular area of life? That's just really helpful for them to assess like keystone habits that are really having a positive impact. And then of course we did something similar for what's the lowest. Where did you just feel like this was really a discouraging year in this area? And why do you think that is? And sometimes there's nothing you can do about it, right? Sometimes it's season of life or something out of your control, but sometimes there's things that you feel like you could do that maybe could fix it. And then we had them pick 1 or 2 areas. Really, 1 would have been fine that they want to focus on for next year, or at least going into this next year. And that didn't mean it didn't have to be their lowest area. Because again, sometimes it's low for reasons outside of your control. But what area matters to you the most to see improvement in and have some intentionality in? This was the closest we got to goal setting. I'm not really a big goal setter. You're a little bit of a goal setter. As it relates to work, I don't know necessarily outside. So I think we're more about intentionality than the specifics of, you and I could probably have a whole podcast where we argue this, actually.
We're very different when it comes to this.
We do not agree on this. I will only speak for myself here. I am not a goal setter. So I was happy to just help the kids think with intentionality, understand that improvement takes effort and that you have to have processed these things. And I'm happy to leave it at that. I'm not trying to give my 11-year-old a bunch of goals for her life. But that was how we approached that. We had them each pick an area that they just wanted to work on. And what do you think is going to make the difference? What are you going to try next? And they each did, and we did. And I thought that was really good.
It was pretty quick. And just the whole point here is this is teaching your kids literally awareness being one of the biggest life hacks. They've done those studies where they've had people who want to lose weight not actually go on a diet or exercise at all, but just stand on the scale every day and track their weight in an Excel spreadsheet. And just by virtue of tracking their weight after a certain period of time, they started to lose weight because they were aware.
They started to make choices.
They saw it every day, gosh, I weigh this much. And that's powerful when awareness alone, it's the same with your money. The part of I kind of hate budgeting as a concept because people get a little obsessed with making the perfect budget, and it just doesn't exist because the moment you do it, something happens in life. So, but it doesn't mean you don't budget or plan. It's the power of budgeting in money, right? Is awareness. What, like how much money is actually coming in and going out and on what, and just a little bit of awareness. You can go, well, we're paying how much to, go out to eat. Just awareness is what is the first step for change. And so this was the first time I think they've ever looked at their health, their friendships, their spiritual life, their fun or play. Like Chloe and our two lowest areas were the same, fun and play. She was like, yeah, I come home from school and I do a ton of homework, and I don't really,
that's true.
I don't really have a lot of fun. And me, like this last year, it was just a lot of adulting. It was like meeting with estate planners and new accountants for the fourth time, and new, bookkeepers and a new financial advisor, and hiring and firing. And it was just like, I just was adulting to the max. I was like, I don't have time for fun, and that wasn't, I didn't have fun, but that was my lowest score. And it's interesting that me and my 14-year-old had that. And we're like, you know what? We want to have more fun this year and work to get that up. We didn't come up with a solution. Again, a lot of this weekend is not solution oriented or goal oriented. It's just awareness. And like, that's powerful. And it kind of gives them a sense of like, oh, I should probably just check in every once in a while and see how I'm doing in these areas.
Yeah, absolutely. So that was kind of part one of our final session, which the kids said was their favorite session.
I know that
really kind of surprised me, but they said that was their favorite session. So I thought that was pretty cool. And then the last thing we did was a 2024 calendar sync. And we printed up a 2024 calendar, month by month, taped it up on the wall, started with the things that we know. What's the school schedule? When are they going to be off of school? What travel do we already have on the calendar? We had kind of color-coded some things, let the kids do it so they kind of manage that. When are birthdays this year? What are we going to do for them if it's going to require any kind of travel? When do we know dad's going to be gone? When do we know mom's going to be gone? When do we know we're going to be gone as a family? When are we going to have people visiting? Everything that we know about 2024, let's go ahead and put it on the calendar so that moving forward, we're able to make good decisions in the context of all the other things that we have going on. Because you and I could very easily just fill the month with lots of fun, cool things, cool opportunities. So that I thought was really fun. Kids kind of started to get a little bit bored in that one.
Can we go to the pool, please?
Right, I know. But it's helpful for you and I, very helpful for me. And within that, you're making some decisions about certain parameters. So for example, it might be depending on what your career looks like and how much control you have over these things. Like how many times of the month do we want Graham to be gone on a speaking engagement? How many times do we want mom to be gone? What's the duration of time that feels good? When he's gone for a day or two, feels like not a big deal. If he's gone for a week, feels like a bigger deal. How did it did it feel like dad was gone a lot? Did it not feel like dad was gone? Did it feel like mom was gone a lot? Did it not feel like it? We also got to build in things like our mid-year assessment. So 6 months from now, we're going to take a look at all of this again as a family. We'll do that probably over our summer vacation, but then also will Graham have a planning time away this summer mid-year, and will Shay have a planning day away sometime probably June, July, making sure we go ahead and get that stuff on the calendar. So it helped. We made a few specific decisions relating to that, but for me, it was most helpful just to see it all in one place in the full context of the year.
And depending on your life, like this may or may not be that helpful because like we have a lot going on in the sense that like we're both entrepreneurs. We travel for different things, and the travel has increased over the years as more opportunities have come. And so we're having to get really good at saying no and being able to discern what's a good use of our time being away from the family as individuals or even as a couple. We're in a mastermind now or a year into this group where we travel a few times a year together for this mastermind. So we're away from the girls. So we've had our calendar start to creep and fill up with more stuff. If you don't have a whole lot going on,
or if there's just not a lot of variation, like for you and I, no 2 months are the same, no 2 weeks are the same.
Yeah, nothing is the same.
We really do have to constantly, and we revisit the calendar monthly and we revisit it weekly.
Yeah, we sync up every week because we have to. So if you're like, what's the point of this? That might be a clue that like you don't need this.
That's fine.
But if you do feel like our life's a little chaotic at worst, or just very full at best, and I just don't have a good grasp on all the things, this is a great way to pause and see. We look at calendars typically on a week or a month basis, but you know what it's like when you've got something at the end of the month, but you're not realizing that the next month you had something at the beginning of the month, and they actually bump up against each other, but you're not thinking about it as a whole time period just as the individual month. This is good to visually see it all. And then so we did it for ourselves, but it's also accountability for us with the girls. Like that's kind of when we talked about like, yeah, you know, how does it feel when dad's gone a certain amount of times? Because I've been traveling more in the last couple of years, and like Chloe was like, "Oh yeah, you were gone a lot," but then she made a point of like, "But they were very short trips.
Yeah,
it didn't feel
really
like you were
like it.
when you were gone. It didn't feel like mom was playing the single mom for long." And so we're trying to check in because that's really important. How it feels. It doesn't really matter how many times I'm gone. It matters how does it feel or how does it affect the family. And obviously my kids are at an age where when I leave, like Shay's not struggling as much as she was, or when she leaves, like
it's a party. When
you had it's actually pretty fun.
I hate to tell you.
Oh, well, you have fun when she
actually, it is a full-blown party when I leave and you watch the girls
100%.
And it's like Chick-fil-A every night and like movies up late. No one has to do chores.
They're like, wait, mom, you were gone? But like there was 2 weeks.
When you leave and I'm home, we're like reorganizing the laundry closets together. Every woman out there.
Why is that?
Whose
fault is that? No, but like she was gone for 2 weeks. Like she was in Italy for a whole week, and then she was in Dallas for a week. It was very rare for Shay to be gone for weeks at a time. And there's twice back-to-back months that she was gone like that. And never once did I feel like it was a struggle because my kids are at an easier age.
If your kids are young, just know it gets easier.
Yeah, but there were seasons when I left even once a year, like it was a nightmare for her. So like all that matters is how does it affect the family, and you have to just sync up on that.
And I think, for us this year, what was the most helpful was for us to look at the whole big picture for the year. But most years that you and I were doing this, we were really focusing on our weekly rhythms. Yeah. And we still need to have more of a conversation about that. But yeah, we've been a family for 14 years now. Like we're kind of in a kind of dialed in season of life, more or less. So yes, we're working on the week to week rhythms, but for some of you, it's the week to week rhythms that are destroying you. Like it's when are you going to bed? It's having to divide and conquer everything. It's having something scheduled every single weekend. It's having 3 kids going in 3 different directions. It's when you're waking up. It's when you're eating dinner. It's really the weekly rhythms is where it's all falling apart. So maybe take that last session and just deep dive into the weekly rhythms. Yep. That was what we did most
Probably, because that probably would have come up in the what didn't work section. And then this would be a great session to be like, okay, how can we create a better weekly rhythm that works for us? And that was it. And at that point, we were all losing our minds. And we went to the pool. So
let's rapid fire a few tips for doing this, and then we'll wrap this up. So one, it doesn't have to be goal centric. The point of this wasn't necessarily that everyone comes away with goals for 2024. It was about intentionality and about assessment and about honesty and about conversation and about everyone's voice being heard. Yeah. Intentionality, thinking forward about the future. Second tip is, don't try to push this too early with your kids. A lot of you listening probably have young kids. And I would say if that's true, and by young, I'm saying like, I would probably not start below the age of 10. Like we probably could have done this last year, although the kids would have been, I think, a little more bored with it, a little less engaged. This felt like a sweet spot, 11 and 14. They seemed really into it.
I would say, because this is interesting, because we didn't do this with the kids until this year. Yeah. So if I were to tell myself in the past what to do, I would say you could do it with the kids being younger, but you would maybe just handpick one session.
Make them smaller.
Let them play or watch a movie while we do some other sessions together. But I would maybe bring them into the...
And I know a lot of families that do this with younger kids. So I'm certainly not saying that you can't, but if you try to do this with your 3 and 5-year-old, you're probably going to lose your mind and be frustrated and feel like it didn't work. So I'm just saying the biggest win is do it as a married couple. Yeah. Lay that foundation year after year after year. Do it once a year, do it twice a year. And then when your kids feel old enough that they can meaningfully participate and give their opinion, then absolutely bring them in. Yeah. But make sure that you're doing it as a couple if you have young kids. Fourth tip is go somewhere fun if you can. Even if you don't have the budget to go stay in a hotel, go to a park, go to a co-working space, go to the lobby of a nice hotel, go to Barnes & Noble, go somewhere that feels fun, so that it's getting you out of the distractions of home and the typical environment. But we've always been a really big fan of using hotel points, even if we were saving our hotel points for this kind of thing early on.
And pro tip, when we had less money, like this time around, A, we had points, so it was free, but B, it was like a 1-bedroom suite. So we have a whole living room and a bedroom. We had all this space, which is great. But rarely have we had that kind of space. Like if we had even some hotel points that were like barely enough for a room, we'd get a room with 2 beds. But if you can find a room that has a balcony and be somewhere where it's not cold, if possible, because the balcony would be useless. But even there'd be times when the only like the kids would be napping and the only
or watching
quiet,
cartoons in the morning. Or something.
but the only quiet place we could talk without them around, or if they needed to sleep, was out on the balcony. So I remember some years it's like you're sitting out there, but at least we had a place.
Do you remember that one year we didn't have a balcony and we sat out in the hallway? Like literally, it was late at night. The kids needed to go to bed, and by the late at night, I mean it was like 8. The kids were in bed.
We did this in the hallway.
And we literally, it was just the only place that we could. I don't think we did this full thing.
I know
but
we've
we
hung
literally
out in
sat out in the
bathrooms.
hallway.
We've sat on the floor of a bathroom when we're like, where else can we go to talk while the kids go down? But like, again, if it has at least a balcony, or if you pick an Airbnb, sometimes it can be cheaper. That's like a little condo. So it's never been the most bougie of places when we started out, but it was like we were thinking about, can we go to a place where there's at least an area where you and I could talk?
That just feels a little bit out of our typical environment. And do that as a couple. If you have young kids and you can afford to go away for even just one night stay somewhere, do this as a couple in that kind of environment that's just relaxing. No one's doing laundry.
Yeah, we're not saying wait to do this until your kids are older. We're saying do it every year.
Do it.
But there might be years where the kids aren't as involved.
But if you do it as a couple and you can afford it, or do it on points, or do it, then go somewhere so it's kind of fun and you're just not in your typical environment. Plan fun things in between. We've kind of already said this, but we broke up these 4 sessions over 3 days. We did fun things. We laid by the pool. We went down water slides. It was not just 6 hours in a hotel room banging this stuff out. That would have been miserable.
No one wants to do that. No one wants to be in a hotel room that long. You kind of lose your mind. But even one year we went to St. Augustine, Florida, and there was like a lot of historical stuff to look at. So we did a little bit of planning. We did our planning like in the evenings when the kids were sleeping.
Yeah.
And then during the day, we would go do fun stuff and look around the town. And so for them, they saw it as a little mini family trip.
Yeah.
And for us, it was both a family trip and did some intentional planning in the evenings.
And then revisit this mid-year. We kind of alluded to this, but our plan is we've done it now for the beginning of the year. And when we're on family vacation this summer, we're going to revisit this. Does this stuff feel true? Is it accurate? Does anything need to be tweaked? Do we still feel the same way? And we'll just kind of revisit it as a family so that we're, going in the direction that we want to be going in all those areas of life.
Yeah. So that's it. And we call it the Family Vision Weekend. And it's a great thing to make it an event like, hey, guys, where should we go for our Family Vision Weekend? So your kids feel like it's something special. It becomes like a thing.
Get good snacks. That should be a pro tip. Bring lots of snacks with you.
Can't go wrong with that.
But in our guide for this that we want to give you guys, we're going to outline what we did for each of the sessions, a lot of what we talked about, but then also like a packing list. Like what are some things? Yeah. This was our first rodeo with this. So there were things that I would do differently. There are things I wish we brought, things I wish we did. So I'm going to put all of that in the guide for you guys.
Yep. Which you can get for free, familygoalspodcast.com/familyvision. And then, if you've enjoyed the episode, please share it, like it, and subscribe if you're on YouTube, and leave a review if you're on Apple Podcasts. It means a lot. Let us know that you're enjoying these episodes. We'll wrap this up. What is one thing you're grateful for today?
I'm grateful that we have one more day today before the kids go back to school tomorrow, and we're all maximizing it. And it was a good start. We worked out, I sauna'd, we're doing this. We have a whole lot of laundry to do this afternoon, but I feel like
the kids are doing that while we're recording this.
10 loads of laundry to do right now, guys. The kids are actually
put your kids to work if you can.
But I'm grateful for that. Yeah. We were gone, and I'm just glad we had that little buffer day before the kids, real life starts back up after 2 weeks off.
That's awesome.
What are you grateful for?
Oh, so many things. I felt like crap on New Year's morning.
So not included in the Instagram reels was that Graham got food poisoning.
Yeah, I was doing great till the very
on New Year's
end.
Eve.
Yeah, so I was feeling like garbage on New Year's Day yesterday when we were taping this, and I feel pretty much better today. So I'm just grateful for that. So good enough to work out and to not be in bed. So feeling good, and I'm grateful for that.
Awesome. All right.
Well, thanks for hanging out with us on this episode. Hope you enjoyed it. We'll see you on another episode real soon.
Bye.